So welcome to both of you. So let's go through some of these front pages. Kicking off with the Sunday Times. They are leading with the news that more children are going to be brought to the UK from Gaza. We saw one case this week of a young boy, a 15-year-old, I think he was, with a shattered jaw. This tells us that up to 300 are going to follow.
Yeah, so the medical visa route, which has been, so far only had 3 people. There were 2 girls brought over early this year in April for pre-existing conditions. Now up to 300 children will be evacuated and brought to the UK and be treated under the NHS. And this is the kind of latest aid that the UK is attempting to give Gaza. And I think it's particularly interesting given a bit of a change in the way that some of the world leaders, people like Donald Trump, have been talking about this. You know, he was in Scotland last weekend saying, I just am trying to figure out how to get people fed in Gaza. And medical aid is a really important thing. The main hospital there has serious fuel shortages. A couple of weeks ago, it had to stop admitting patients. And this is something that hospitals and countries across Europe have been doing. In places like Ireland, I think Norway and Sweden have also brought children over to be treated in their health service, to give them that kind of medical treatment and guarantee them that safety when they are being treated.
Well, that's right. And actually, further into the copy, they do talk about 7,000 patients from Gaza have been evacuated out of the Strip, 5,000 children, but most have gone to countries like Egypt, the UAE and Qatar. But it looks like European countries and the UK are stepping up the number that they're taking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the UK are obviously pledging to have up to 300 evacuees receiving medical aid in the UK, but we've actually so far only managed to have 3 since the start of this war, obviously because it is actually logistically extremely difficult to get people out of Gaza, as we know. But the important thing here as well is it's not just allies of Gaza or of Palestine who are stepping in here and helping with military aid. I mean, Europe overall has accepted about 200 medical patients so far. We're set to actually increase that number in the coming weeks. So this is definitely not just a case of those who are supporting the Palestinian cause stepping in here. This is a huge international response where actually countries, even if they don't necessarily, if they aren't allied with Palestine and actually maybe their allyship is with Israel, they're still seeing this as an absolute humanitarian response that we need to put our politics aside for.
Yeah, and it looks like it's taken a certain amount of cross-departmental coordination as well. They talk about David Lammy, Yvette Cooper and Wes Streeting from Foreign, Home and Health departments working together on the plan. They're also talking about how there's various security checks that have to take place. I mean, it's a complicated business, isn't it? And also other family members can accompany these children, you know, a parent or guardian and possibly siblings, and they are saying that some of them may not ever go back.
It is, and you have the logistical challenge of getting people out of Gaza, but then going through all the processes necessary to get them into the UK while going through a lot of those safety checks. And as you say, you know, the people who've already come, those three children on visas, they've had parents or guardians accompany them. And Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, will be very careful to make sure that all of the biometric screening, et cetera, has been done, so that so that we don't turn this into any kind of political story and it stays as it is, a humanitarian response.
And they want the public on side.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and especially with growing pressure towards the Labour Party, our government, to actually step up their support for Palestine. I mean, this has been a huge stumbling block for Labour since they've entered power and long before, actually. So this is definitely a lot of pressure on Keir Starmer to show that he is acting and to show that he is willing to intervene when needed.
OK, take us on now to the Observer's front page. And if we look at the front page, there's not a huge amount of copy on there, but the kind of striking headline about Britain's, what they describe as their real immigration crisis and the solution. So take us inside the paper and what's said.
Yeah, so this is basically part of this long-winded debate that has been going on for such a long time now about whether or not we have digital ID, and that is effectively having a form of a driving licence, passport-like document on your phone, on the internet, and the government basically say that this would be a good way to track where people are going, whether people are leaving the country, entering the country. But of course, it's not as easy as that might seem. There are all sorts of issues and obstacles and reasons why lots of people are really against this. The main one being that it's seen as mass surveillance. There is a massive worry about what the government would be doing with our data, especially given what they did with the Afghan data recently. I think that will definitely raise
lack
more
of security
lack
around
of
it as it
security,
leaked,
and I think that will definitely amp up the worries about this and whether or not we can trust the government with this level of data from individuals across the UK and from outside the UK as well. And there's another issue as well with discrimination. Not everyone has access to the internet, a smartphone. So what do we do about these people who slip through the cracks? But this is basically Labour saying that they probably do want to go ahead with this. We aren't obviously the first country to do this. We're actually one of the few in Europe that don't have digital ID. So they basically think that it's the right thing to do to go ahead with this.
Yeah, and as Alicia was saying, a huge debate over this, but do you think that the public would be on side if they felt that it could make a difference?
Well, so it's really about how the story is told, I think. And, you know, as we've talked about already, is that immigration is this huge issue for the government. And if the story can be told of we need to have digital ID because it makes it easier to check rights to work, for example, and it makes it harder for people to work illegally, and there will be very careful checks in place. You know, the argument that always comes back, and I mean, we had it during the pandemic when we were doing kind of COVID testing and all of the rest of that, is that we don't want to live in a papers, please society. And that's the kind of argument which tends to be from the more kind of libertarian side of politics. If digital ID is a solution to many of the immigration problems that we have in the UK, I think there has to be a very careful approach to it. This is something which has been pushed again and again by the Tony Blair Institute, a think tank which works closely with government on all kind of tech-related things. And they're kind of on the slightly more liberal end of it, I think, than a lot of people would accept. And even though there is this real angst about immigration, there is, I think, even more angst about the idea that we're going to have to be able to kind of proffer up information to prove that we are legitimately in this country at any stage. And I don't think that would be the way that digital ID would work in the UK, but that would be the fear.
OK, so it sounds like it's a debate that is going to carry on for a while yet. Take us to the Mail on Sunday next, because their headline is "Carry on, Doctor," but that doesn't really tell the story. It's basically the NHS England putting out a statement saying that the strike last week by resident doctors, previously known as junior doctors, was less effective, essentially, than previous strikes.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is basically saying that, you know, two-thirds of resident doctors, as you say, previously junior doctors, and I'm not out of the habit of calling them junior doctors yet,
no.
Have decided to continue working. They didn't go to the picket line. And that would be good news for the government. And I think overall there's been stats out from the NHS saying that about 93% of all procedures went ahead anyway, regardless of the strikes. If you compare that to what happened during the kind of 2023 strikes, the big doctor strikes we saw a few years ago, that's 10,000 more operations and consultations which went ahead. And that's, you know, for the health secretary, he's thinking this is great news. For the unions, they're thinking, well, this undermines us seriously, because how can we have these pay negotiations with Wes Streeting, the health secretary, if our doctors don't appear to be supporting us? And I think it also raises real questions. And Wes Streeting said, you know, the BMA rushed to strike. We were under negotiations. We were talking about all kinds of things. He wanted to have a 3-week intensive period. They could have been a couple of weeks into that already. And it seems like the resident doctors didn't seem to agree with the decision to strike.
Well, certainly they obviously got that they've passed the thresholds to get strike action approved. So a certain number of people obviously did back it. But what do you think, Alicia? Because public opinion seems to be shifting on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you compare public opinion from this time last year, the decrease in public support for the resident/junior doctors has gone down so rapidly and substantially. And I think that is fully because when Labour came into power, they said, right, we're going to offer a swathe of pay increases to try and stave off these strikes. However, clearly that hasn't really worked the way they wanted it to. And now I think the public maybe raise their eyebrow a little bit and say, OK, well, maybe strike action isn't the way forward. Is it just going to be that they accept a little bit and then keep doing this? I mean, what really is the solution here? So that's definitely a pattern. But
Okay.
I think...
I was going to say, before we start a new idea, we're out of time. I'm so sorry. Maybe save it for the next hour, because you will both be back. But for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Turkey is burying its dead.